Yo, welcome to another episode of the BJJ Goons podcast. I'm Tim, one half of the greatest tag team in the history of martial arts podcasts. And with me,
as always, every week, no new Nico, Nico Ball. Glad to be back for another amazing episode of the BJJ Goons podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is one of those, if you know things, don't repeat anything that you see with the editing of this video to everybody else. But we're about to bring in a special guest, a homie from New York who wrote an amazing article. It got sent to both me and Tim, so we had to have him on. And he came to us from the islands of Greece. So I'm going to give it away to Tim. He made the dopest intro I've ever heard.
All right, so this week we've got Dr. Michael Pappas. He is an activist. He is a medical doctor practicing in New York City and contributing member of The Left Voice, a revolutionary socialist news site and magazine dedicated to fostering a sustained and strategic struggle against every form of capitalist exploitation and oppression. Like Nico said, he had an awesome article about the death of Leandro Lo and the circumstances. If you didn't know already, he was murdered by a police officer down in Brazil who this officer we later found out was a purple belt and already had a history of violence which he was convicted of. Also in this episode, Michael Pappas gives us his take on adopt-a-cop programs. Definitely want to hear about this in light of the passing of Leandro Lo. So guys, make sure you sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the BJJ Goons podcast.
Perfect.
So, where to begin? So I guess first to just, it'll become very, very clear for everybody, I think, even as I start speaking, but I am I'm a medical doctor in New York, but I'm also a revolutionary socialist. So I think that the only path to liberation for all humanity is through the destruction of the capitalist system and the overthrow of that system. I think that system is central to the exploitation and oppression of people around the world, and it's central to the destruction of the globe that we're seeing. And I think that, for a long time, I've already come to these conclusions, but I think that one of the entities or institutions that helps to continue or helps to uphold that oppressive system is the institution of policing. And even if we look to the origins of the institution of policing in the United States, policing has its origins in slave patrols in the South of the United States and night watches. And I don't necessarily think that the way that the police function in our society today has altered all that much. So the central role today of policing, though there's a myth that the police keep us safe, that they protect us, or those types of things, the central role of the institution of policing in society today is to protect the capitalist system and to protect the ruling class and the rich who benefit off of that system. And in the process of upholding that system, the police serve to oppress, brutalize, maim, and kill people around the world, often predominantly Black and brown people around the world, and often the poor and oppressed. So I had already kind of come to those conclusions. And as somebody who, in addition to having those politics, I practice medicine. And I think that my interest in practicing medicine, maybe we'll get into that, maybe we won't, but where I practice in those types of things, it's integrally connected to my politics, right? So I was doing that, and I practiced martial arts for probably 10 plus years now. I started practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu along with Muay Thai when I graduated college a bunch of years ago and was living in New York City. And then I've continued practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu predominantly from that point on. I'm a purple belt in Jiu-Jitsu now. And then in between, I've done things like did like a year of judo and some other martial arts. And so having practiced martial arts for around 10 years, all of these different, and having, done medical training in Washington, D.C., having traveled around different parts of the US and the world, and either taking classes at different schools, I always noticed how embraced the cops are at a majority of martial arts schools and jiu-jitsu schools, and how many cops practice jiu-jitsu. I also, living in New York City, I know that the NYPD, which is a extremely racist and disgusting police force, has its own Brazilian jiu-jitsu team. And places where I've trained, I've seen, the schools hold different seminars with the cops, or self-defense seminars with the cops, and all these things to make them look better. And I always thought how ridiculous that was, knowing the role of policing in society. So then after seeing what happened to Lo and hearing that he was killed by a cop, and I think recently it has come out that that cop is also a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. After it's come out that he was not only killed by a cop, but also somebody who practices jiu-jitsu, I just thought, like, I already knew the direction that a majority of the community was going to go, which was going to be, showing all of the great things that Lo did when it came to jiu-jitsu, but completely keeping the politics out of it and completely sanitizing it, because cops are so revered in the community. And I thought, if any time is a time when one of the greatest of all time was just killed by a cop, to kind of come to a reckoning of the connection and the relationship between the jiu-jitsu community and the martial arts community and policing, maybe now would be a time to do that. So that's why I wrote the article.
And I think it was a really amazing article. One thing I want to point out is that, when was it, a couple weeks ago, or was it 3 weeks ago maybe, I had made some comments about Bronx Jiu-Jitsu and the Adopt the Cop. So I was very vocal about defunding police. But in your article, you do not speak on defunding the police. You talk about the need to abolish the institution and how you can't really fix something. And I think that's a very important distinction that a lot of people in the community don't even make. And it's like, when I was saying all of those things that I was saying, I did not have your perspective, of this institution just needs to be eliminated, like it's unfixable. So I think the fact that people can't even see the differences in the arguments, the fact that I was saying, it's like, why are we letting these people train for free, and not even to get into the ineffectiveness of the program, because the Adopt the Cop program only goes to blue belt. Once you get your blue belt, then you're out. So it's like, this person was a purple belt. They have a history of violence. They have a history of being protected by the police force. This person was tried, convicted, and charged on July 30th, and then he was released. He wasn't put in jail. Had he been in jail for the crimes that he committed, Leandro Lo would not be dead. And then there was a thing, the news said that he turned himself in. Otavio Nalache, he was saying he did not turn himself in. He did not. He denied it was him. And the only reason that he did turn himself in was because there's witnesses. Everybody knew it was, so he had to go in. So it's very interesting to see, because I had a lot of people from New York. And at one point, I would think, if you don't follow Pabs, you should follow Pabs. You have to figure out which freaking page is it has, because he started Black Harpoon, but he posts a lot of long stories. I used to think he was easy, and now I think it's like, no, not easy being in New York. I don't think they're beast.
Yeah, I mean, to just comment on a couple of things that you brought up, one of the things, whether he this whole, oh, he turned himself in thing, I think another thing that we have to take account to is whether he did or didn't turn himself in, the cops know that they will be protected under the system of policing that they function, and under the system of capitalism which they protect. So even at the time, I thought the information that came out, at least at the time, was, oh, he turned himself in. And one of the things I wrote about in my article was, well, of course he turned himself in, because if he's going to turn himself in to his friends who are going to protect him, he's going to a group that's going to protect him. So it was framed by so many news stations that even covered it, who were obviously completely acritical of the institution of policing, that, oh, he turned himself in. Yay for him. He turned himself in. But the reason why he went, even if he did turn himself in, is because he knows, I'm going to be protected. I'm going to be tried by like a military court that basically is going to have leniency on me, and I'm going to get off. And we see this all the time in the United States, of basically cops who eventually, after they murder somebody, if they even are caught, which we should say there are tons that we never even hear about, but if they're even caught, then when they go on trial, oftentimes they get off, or they get some like BS charge, or you name it. And the only time that cops are ever held accountable is when people rise up, mobilize, and force the system to actually hold them accountable. And that's because the cops serve to protect that system. So basically, they're defenders of capital. They're defenders of the rich. So they're not going to be ever held accountable unless they're forced to be held accountable. But besides that, I think that like this whole idea that cops protect the public in any way, we just need to do away with. Cops they are spouse abusers, they're murderers, the institution itself is racist, they themselves are racist. So having a cop come in your jiu-jitsu school or your martial arts school to say, oh, we're going to teach them some techniques, and then, they won't brutalize people as much. It's like, no, they operate in an actual institution that is designed to brutalize people, that's designed to oppress the poor and working class. It doesn't matter if you teach them X or Y technique thinking they won't use their gun. The only thing that you're doing as a jiu-jitsu instructor, welcoming a cop into your school and teaching them these techniques, is literally giving them more weapons to harm the poor and working class, and to defend the rich, and to defend a system that is actively destroying the earth. So there's no benefit to welcoming them into your school. And then the idea that there's another thing that I see a lot of martial arts schools do, which is somehow partner with a community. We want to partner with the community. The school wants to partner with the community, which I think in itself, a martial arts institution wanting to partner with the community is great. But then there's some type of idea that if we partner with the cops, that we can hold a self-defense seminar or something with the cops. Why does a multiple degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, multiple of them, need to invite, I don't even know if I can curse on this podcast, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna, some dipshit cop there, some dipshit public relations cop to be with you there to do a public defense seminar? Your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, or multiple Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts in one setting. That self-defense seminar can be held without any connection to the police whatsoever. So the only purpose that partnering with the cops does there is it helps to improve the public image of an institution that should be abolished. So, and that's why, by the way, the NYPD, or you name the police institution, has these public relations cops, because they're an institution of racist murderers that needs to make themselves look better. So they need to have public relations people employed to go do things like this to make themselves look better. So then they can go the next day and they can break up a homeless encampment in New York, or they can shut down some protest. They can beat the shit out of people protesting to have people have access to abortion. They can do all those types of things. That's why those exist. So yeah, I mean, I think that all of the reasoning behind partnering with the institution of policing in any way is completely just ridiculous. And especially when you have professors or martial arts schools that preach, like connection, being humble, like self-restraint, all these things. It's completely antithetical to what you are saying is central to your teaching of your art, a gentle art of jujitsu, or you name it, to then partner with such a brutal institution of policing.
Very true. Give us just 1 second. I want to switch over the internet so that we make sure that you're not like breaking up, and then we can just continue like
It
normal.
also, by the way,
That's some
might
amazing
be
points.
my internet, because I have
No,
like a
it's
little
always
piece of
mine.
crap thing
Where
here.
did you say you were?
I'm in Greece.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm on this. I'm on an island specifically called Ikaria, which is where a bunch of communists and socialists were exiled to back in the day. So it's like a very left island. But the one negative of the island is there's not very good internet anywhere.
Yeah. Hey, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I have like a commercial internet, and it sucks. So I'm gonna switch over to my phone. We might dip out for a second.
Okay.
I don't want it to be breaking up with these gems.
A lot of gems.
Is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? No.
A lot.
That's what I thought last time that he froze, but he's just a still person.
Okay, we back?
Yep.
All right, I have a follow-up question. Do you think that we as a community can step away from the bootlicking, essentially, is what I'm trying to say? Because it's ingrained in the history of the art form, dating back to the Gracies, the relationships with strong-arm dictators, just right-wing, just abuse of power. Do you think it's possible for us to step away from that? And if so, what steps can we take now to step away from the bootlicking?
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's going to be an extremely difficult task to basically step away from that, because it's not just it's ingrained in the art form. It's also ingrained in our societal structure, how integral the institution of policing is to protecting these systems of oppression and protecting the status quo. So we are basically from, like, especially in the US, but it's all over the world, from a young age, people are just indoctrinated into accepting the idea that we need cops, we need the institution of policing to keep us safe. I think part of that is it's a process of individualization of crime and those types of things, or like what we call crime, but just like sometimes acting in a way that is not conducive to the functioning of capitalism. So it's ingrained in us from a very, very young age to say, okay, well, this individual is a problem. And since this individual is a problem, we need this institution to take care of these problematic individuals. That's super useful because it misdirects our gaze away from a system that creates poverty, inequality, puts people in situations that they feel so desperate that they need to go do things like to survive. And then it also misdirects our gaze away from a prison industrial complex that's super, super profitable, and obviously doesn't want to be threatened. It also makes us, so for example, I'm going on a tangent, I'm going to get back to your question though. It also gets us thinking, like, I work in a harm reduction facility in New York.
For substance abuse?
Yeah. So it's called On Point NYC. It's the first overdose prevention center in the United States, where people can bring their drugs there to test them, use on site, get medical care, get substance abuse treatment, those types of things. But like,
wait, they're allowed to bring illegal drugs there?
Yeah.
Like a free zone?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Oh,
like it's
wow. That's
like there's a place
interesting.
there's an area in the back actually where they can use under medical supervision. And this is something that has been happening all around the world for many, many years. It's just, you know, the drug war being like so central to the US's, the racist drug war and racism being so central to the US's DNA that it took a while to get something like that in the US, but it's been going on a lot of other places. And we see like decrease in overdoses, increase in connection to substance abuse treatment, increases in connection to housing, healthcare, all those things. But
Yeah.
you know, the patients that I work with, it's super advantageous to like criminalize the way that they're living and the way that they're dealing with like the deep inner suffering that they're experiencing and those types of things, and be like, this person's bad. Whereas like a Jeff Bezos who's literally actively destroying the earth and has an addiction to wealth, power, money, those types of things, we can just be like, yay, he's doing great. All this is just built into the way that our society functions. So to get it out of even something like martial arts, I think is going to be like something extremely, extremely difficult. But I think that we need to, that's part of the reason why I wrote this article. Like we need to start just being open with talking about it. I kind of felt like there's like this, everybody like whisper going on or something, people who are left who train, and they're like, wait, what the hell are these cops doing here? But nobody wants to say it because then you got to train with cops. There's like a cop who's like there's cops who are black belts and things, and then I got to train with them. I'm like, shit, I got to train with this guy, and I just said fuck the police, and now I got to roll with this guy, and who knows how that's going to work out. But I feel like one of the first steps that we to confronting this bootlicking is just being open with confronting it. And I don't think that it's just in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? Like the cops have infiltrated all different martial arts. So we can even talk about Brazilian jiu-jitsu with what you talked about, Tim, or going back to like the battles of Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Luta Livre and the difference in like class dynamics there. And now how certain like art forms are like looked down upon, and there's like class dynamics there, and the cops help to uphold class dynamics in our society, which I think is an interesting connection in itself. But other martial arts like Krav Maga, like the founder of Krav Maga, who I think he came from like Czechoslovakia, and then he went to what was Palestine, and he was the head of the IDF. And you hear people all the time talking about like, I'm going to train Krav Maga. And it's like, okay, can we talk about the fact that that's literally used to brutalize Palestinians like around the world, and to continue the process of genocide that's happening against the Palestinian people? Like, people want to separate their politics from their activities inside of martial arts, and I don't think that those things should be separated. I think that we need to bring our politics into martial arts, and we need to be open in confronting these things, because whether it's the cops infiltrate or being part of martial arts and needing to be open with that, or how the cops relate to society, needing to be open in confronting that, I think that that's like the first step, in my opinion, in trying to confront the bootlicking, as you called it.
That was a very that was an awesome answer.
Yeah.
I can't find a proper educational term for bootlicking.
And like, it kills me that he keeps saying that, like, oh, this bootlicking in jujitsu, because like you said, I don't think it's inherent in jujitsu. I think it's all around, just like with the sexual predators. Like, why does jujitsu attract so many sexual predators? And it's like, have you turned on Netflix? like every industry has sexual predators, and they've all gone bigger and harder than ours. Like, jujitsu is a baby industry, so like you really can't compartmentalize it. Like, so what you're saying about, separating politics. I only know, like, I train at a place, High Style. It's the only place I know in DC where they just outright will not let cops in. They have some military people that like jumped into this gray area, and they're like, well, they're not cops. That's their one thing. No cops. And like people go against it so hard. But I said, like, and I told Tim, I was like, you got to think of who your demographic and who your market is. Like, this is my platform. People that had an issue with me saying stuff on my Instagram and my podcast that I have built, anti-cop. I work with previously incarcerated students and felons. Like, I had a conversation with a guy, he was drinking. He was in Lorton Prison, which is a historically horrible federal prison because DC is not a state. So when you get arrested in DC, you get sent out to the feds. That means you could be sent anywhere. Like you're not guaranteed to have visitation with your family because you're here in DC. Like right now, my mentee, he went from Brooklyn. From Brooklyn, he went to like Pittsburgh. And like, so he's just out and about anywhere. And it's just really hard to see the amount of people I see incarcerated that are getting hurt. Like I was talking to Tim and Tim said, you know, seeing Leandro and seeing the video where he was wheeled away, that was the first time he's ever seen anybody that he knows personally that has passed.
Yeah.
To me,
Appear.
And in that form, however it is, like I work with people and I told him in that conversation, like I know at least 15 people that have died this summer, but I don't know any of them personally. They're all people of my students, like loved ones of my loved ones. And it still hurts. I've sat here on this podcast and this was a police murder. Like the co-defendant of my mentee and the police did not know it was him, fell asleep in his car at 3 a.m. The cops woke him up and shot him 10 times. Because he did have a gun on him, but he was asleep.
Yeah.
They shot him 10 times. And like, there is no way to find out what happened to that cop. I looked and I looked and I looked, and there is no follow-up for the family. There is no follow-up for people like me that want to know what happened to this man. He's on paid administrative leave. That means he's still taking my tax dollars and going out drinking. The other day at the wharf, a cop was out drinking. Somebody brandished a gun, ran away. He shot them in the back of, I think it was the head. And then there's video when they finally released his body cam footage. He's dying on the street. They handcuff him before they turn him over and try to give him life-saving, like save his life. He's damn near dead. And that's what the cops did. They handcuffed him. So it's like, well, as I was saying I was drinking with somebody that was imprisoned in Lorton. That's where I was going. And to see when he was talking about the cops, to see just the fear and the hate in his eyes, in his beady little drunk eyes, you know, it was just that pure fear. And like, his eyes were just squinty and it was just terror. Like, and that was the name of the documentary, The Terror at Lorton Prison. You could just see it in his expression. And he doesn't vocalize it. He was just saying it. But as like somebody that works with a lot of people, it was just something that went across his eyes. And it was just like, and that's police, and that is the police system. And there are lawyers in books that I have, like the Concealed Carry magazine, they straight up say, like, cops, if they tell you to be quiet and you need to be the fuck quiet. Cause like, if you say something, they're going to charge you for it. Not because they want to, but because they can. And that's their job. And that's what they do. Like.
Yeah. I mean, a couple thoughts in response. So just as racism and white supremacy is central to the capitalist system and the origins of the capitalist system, it's also central to policing. And I think that then while there are exceptions in these types of things, especially with what has recently happened in Texas with the school shooting there and the cops showing how absolutely fucking useless they are, to what every single time there is some white supremacist mass shooter, the cops somehow are able to arrest them and then take them to Burger King or give them a pat on the back or whatever. And it's because they're a racist white supremacist institution that's made up of many people with the same exact views of these mass shooters, because the institution itself is racist to its core. So I think it's like, it's absolutely disgusting, but each time that I see the cops shoot often a black person, often a poor black person, you know, and then afterwards be like, oh, well, there was a gun or there was this or there was that. It's like, this is how this institution functions. It's just so clear. It's becoming, it can't, like every single week we have another example of them proving how the institution functions, how the institution relates to our society, how the institution only serves to defend capital. Like I brushed over it, but just the other day in New York, there were protesters who were like out trying to defend an abortion clinic, and the cops came and just like beat the shit out of people and arrested a bunch of reporters. Like that's their role, to shut shit down like that. Back after George Floyd's murder, there were all the protests going on in New York, and I was acting as a protest medic one summer. The cops cornered us in the Bronx, trapped us, beat the shit out of people, and arrested everybody after they beat the shit out of them, and arrested all the medics. And that's just how the cops function. They function to protect the system, shut down any type of like uprising against it, brutalize people, and continue to brutalize people to basically keep the working class in line. Like they're just one of the strong arms of the capitalist system to keep the working class in line. And to go around around what happened with Lo, one of the other things that I wanted to bring up that I think is interesting is, all of these jiu-jitsu institutions talk about how they want to honor Leandro. We're going to honor Leandro tonight on Flow Grappling with a 6-hour marathon to honor him. And the IBJJF is going to honor him too. Everybody wants to honor him. You know what? If you really wanted to fucking honor him, what you would do is you would say the institution of policing murdered this man. And we need to, as a community, come to terms with that. But as you mentioned, how jiu-jitsu is like a growing even market in the United States, just as the cops are central to defending capitalism and racism is central to capitalism and all those types of things, this little market of jiu-jitsu, as it grows, the way that that's like functioning, like as another one of these highly profitable institutions, they care about money over everything. They don't give a fuck about Leandro. Let's just be real. They don't give a fuck. Flo doesn't give a fuck. The IBJJF doesn't give a fuck. They care more about protecting their relationships to police, protecting the money that they're making on their which I watch them myself, but like whatever the competition is, a who's number one thing, or whether the IBJJF has everybody paying. It's like literally like the mafia of jiu-jitsu. Pay this much money to come to this thing. You got to pay all of these fees. Where's all that money going? Like they pretend they're doing some great service, but these are all becoming highly profitable institutions. And because they're highly profitable institutions, they don't want to talk about the actual real issues that led to even one of the greatest of all time at the pinnacle of their institution's killing. They don't want to talk about what really happened. They're not going to mention that a cop murdered him. They're not going to mention that a cop who practiced jiu-jitsu murdered him. They're going to mention any of that type of stuff because money comes first in these institutions, no matter how much they want to pretend they like care about the people who function inside of them.
That is so true. And speaking of money, I remember I'm kind of hungover last night, so I saw this when I was really drunk. And luckily somebody, because I was going to post this, I was posting this to my story, and somebody was like, put your phone down. So after shooting Leandro Lo in the head 2 times and kicking him, so like he kicked a gun wound, like to me, that indicated like a highly depraved individual. It came out like last night after doing that, this man went to another bar. He consumed a bottle of whiskey, 2 coconut waters, and an energy drink, and 2 shots of gin. Ran up a bill that cost 1,600 reais, which is the equivalent of the Brazilian monthly minimum wage. So he ran up a minimum wage after murdering someone. And maybe as a doctor or a man, y'all can speak on this, he went to a hotel and fucked some girl. How do you get your dick hurt after you murder someone? Tell me how you have sex after shooting someone in the head. That's what he did after he killed Lo.
Well, that won't be on Flow Grappling.
No. Yeah, no, that won't be on Flow Grappling.
No.
Also, when you're a racist murderer, then that just becomes an everyday practice in your life. So then, it's like brushing your teeth. I go kill somebody and kick them, and then I go just on with my merry day because because the role, especially in Brazil, of the police brutalizing people throughout the favelas, it's like, this is what I do. This is my job. Like, as a doctor, I treat people's illnesses, prescribe medicine, these types of things. As a cop in Brazil, your role is to brutalize the fuck out of poor people throughout the country and kill people. And that's what this guy did.
So damn sad.
I'm kind of speechless on that part, because I said it last week, a couple weeks ago. This is like if Kobe died. This feels like when Kobe died, but imagine like he came back when he won like his 4th and 5th title and he was murdered. And we just get a 6-hour marathon of his matches, and no one, I mean, I stay off of jiu-jitsu social media, but no one is talking about the circumstances of it besides your article, Pobs. And I kind of feel like jiu-jitsu is like there's two different worlds, kind of just like the real world we live in. But with that said, I think it would be good that we have in schools that don't let police in there, or schools that are very mindful that there's a multicultural environment that do jujitsu. You know, it's not just middle-aged 20 to 35-year-old white guys that do jujitsu. There's people that are on the LGBTQ spectrum that are Black, white, Latino, not from here. Maybe there could be an alternative to the whole adopt the cop programs that you see. Do you see there being an alternative? Do you have any suggestions for an alternative to that?
I mean, I think that there should be schools that openly say, fuck the police on, hey, this is fuck the police jujitsu. Don't walk the fuck in here. Like, I think that there should be alternatives like that basically cops aren't welcome. Cops aren't welcome here. We're not going to give you weapons to brutalize the working class here. You already have enough weapons. You already have fucking military grade weapons that you're getting for the NYPD, like all these sound cannons and all this shit to brutalize people and defend capital. And we're not going to give you extra physical weapons with jujitsu. You're not welcome here. Like, I think that it could be just a start of that, basically. I think another thing, and actually this is the first time I've ever, like, it's just as you were speaking, Tim, it came to my mind, so I'm just like riffing here. But one of the things I was thinking about with jiu-jitsu too, when you were talking about, you know, like different people who come, train, those types of things, is, and I know that there are exceptions to this when it comes to schools, but oftentimes, even when it comes to the cost to train jiu-jitsu in many major cities is prohibitive to a number of people from poor and working class communities to actually be able to train jiu-jitsu. And I think that sometimes can lead to a skew in class dynamic of who's able to then train jiu-jitsu, a class and race dynamic in many schools of who's able to train jiu-jitsu. So I think another thing that could be done is, and I know that there are some exceptions to this in New York even, is like different types of sliding fee scales and all these types of things to allow other people who might not have the opportunity to come train the art, instead of like, you know, wealthier white people and cops who are coming to train. So those are a couple of thoughts on that. And then the other thing that you mentioned when you were talking about, you know, it's as if Kobe was killed, is even the language, the way that people are speaking of Leandro's like passing, they'll say right what he said, they're like, oh, he passed. We're just so saddened by his passing. It's just such a sad thing. And it's like, the man was like, just won a world title. He just won a world title and he was murdered. He didn't pass away gently in his sleep. He was murdered. And just even the way it's being articulated is to help completely sanitize any political discussion from this, to then give some type of fake honoring of a man that was just murdered by cops. And it's absolutely fucking disgusting.
It really is. somebody had reached out to Hal from Flow Grappling asking how he could say, like, he used that terminology past apparently, and he was like, how the fuck could you say that? Like, he was murdered. And his response was like, I had to choose my words because I didn't want to be upset, and I had to go and do my job later that evening, which
That's not a good enough excuse.
I mean, like,
I'm
I
sorry.
could, like, when you think about it and you think it's a very capitalist excuse, is what I come to think of it now. Like, I didn't realize who was fighting that night because I don't watch Who's Number One, and there's no way in fucking hell I'm gonna watch Gordon Ryan fight any longer than 10 minutes. Like, that's all I got for y'all black belts is 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna go do me. Like, I'm gonna work on my own drills, and I'm gonna try to be a black belt world champion and fight at Worlds, which is 10 minutes. Like, to understand like the level of disrespect that they did Felipe, like, did he just stop the fight? Did he just say I can't do this anymore? Because like,
I heard, I haven't watched it yet because I don't feel like watching 45 minutes.
because nobody's gonna do it, and I just hear it in the comments. I heard it thanks to shout out to Mixed Martial Artist, because he's like the kind of people that are going on. It's like, how are y'all going on Felipe? Like, oh, we're very concerned about people's mental health, and like he couldn't fight because he was a good friend of Lo, so he just like stopped the fight. So it's like, I saw it, like Hal had also posted like, people want me to cancel Who's Number One, like, hell no, da, da, da. And it's like, all right, yeah, why would they? But like, knowing that about Felipe, and like the fact that like, if you can't say somebody is murdered because you don't feel like you can perform your job, like then like fall in line with us, like grieve with us, mourn with us, fuck Who's Number One, like fuck this promotion and like all of the money that you went and put into it. Like,
the whole I needed to I had to say it that way because I had to do my job. You said it that way because if you would have said he was murdered by a fucking cop, then you would not, like, all of a sudden you'd be cut off of being able to even speak, because in order for that institution to keep functioning the way it is, you need to completely sanitize it. If all of a sudden Flow becomes political, or all of a sudden, like, after I posted on Instagram something about, is Flow or IBJJF or whoever going to actually mention at all in their fake honorings that Lo was murdered by a cop tonight. And a couple of my friends that I trained with messaged me and they were like, no, they're not going to because of X, Y, and Z. And I was like, no shit, I completely agree. No shit, they're not going to, because if they did, then the money train would be halted. So because they're an institution that's making a bunch of money, they're obviously not going to mention it, which is even more so why I posted what I posted, because I knew that they weren't going to mention it, because that's how they have to function in order to continue. So I guess, like, if people want to like contort themselves to make themselves feel comfortable, like, I had to do it because of X, Y, or Z. Okay, like, I get why you might be like lying to yourself, but we should just be truthful with ourselves. No, I had to say it that way because if I didn't say it that way, I wouldn't be able to say anything anymore. Like, that's just the way it is.
It's very hard to deal with. Very hard
to deal with. That's why I just train martial arts and stay out the way and just record a podcast where I get to meet very educated, very enlightened, and just very cool guests like yourself, Dr. Michael. Is there anything else that you'd like to plug, like to let the people know about that you're working on, or anything that parting shots that you want to give the listeners?
I mean, if people like this content or the content in my article, they should check out Left Voice. We're a revolutionary publication and group here in the US, but we're in a bunch of countries around the world. The website is www.leftvoice.org. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, those things. You can find my other writing there. I'm also on Twitter. What is my Twitter handle? It's like Dr. M _ Pappas, I think, is my Twitter handle. Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, but all of my writing and content is on Left Voice. So check us out, www.leftvoice.org.
Yeah, you have a lot of really good articles, and we've been trying to bring together athletes and instructors and have conversations about organizing in the martial arts community. So we'll definitely have to invite you to the next time we have one of those conversations. You have a lot of amazing work. I was reading a lot of your articles about unions and things like that.
Thanks. I'd be super interested. This was great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, on behalf of Dr. Michael Pappas, on behalf of Nico Ball, I'd like to say thanks again for listening to another episode of the BJJ Goons podcast. You can catch us every Monday at 12 a.m. midnight. And thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Peace.